Shall we begin?
Now, before the pandemic, we were working on an album called The Atlantean Emerald. But some of the tunes we had written for that one were cut because they didn't quite fit the vibe. So when pandemic hit, we decided, hey, these tunes, they're pretty cool tunes. They may not fit that one, but if we write a couple more along these lines, it might make a pretty interesting album.
You know, for a while we were all in lockdown, and the only way to make music was at home. I would go over to Johnny's place, we'd socially distance, and I'd go into his laundry room where there's a big box, and in that box is an isolated guitar amp. Plug into it, put on headphones, and play.
A big part of the sound of Arcade is where we recorded it. In my experience, I was out on the East Coast in Nova Scotia, just outside New Glasgow. My parents had this cottage there with a side bunkie. It's well over 100 years old and used to be a horse stable. So you can hear the rough hand-hewn lumber imparting historical significance to the drum sound.
Curiosity was a big part of this album, not only in terms of composition, but sound design, you know, trying out different sounds that normally we wouldn't have tried with this band.
With Griffith Hiltz Trio, we can really experiment and just go anywhere where our heads take us, you know. And we're very into synthesizers. You know, started with the bass pedal synthesizers. But Johnny, as he's gotten more and more involved in creating music for film and television, he's really gotten into synths like in a much deeper way than I ever did with the bass. So this new album is the real progression is that Johnny's now doubling on synths as well. You know, we've got the sounds of Moog synthesizers, Dave Smith, and a Roland. We've got the sounds of Archtop and Telecaster guitars. We've got saxophones, drum kit, Nintendo, and the Atari 2600. So we both have augmented our acoustic sounds.
Some of the tunes were inspired by some of the synth sounds themselves. There's one tune in particular, Play the Game. I remember one day I was practicing saxophone and getting a bit frustrated, so I reached over, started messing around with one of the synths on my desk, and the patch that was just loaded up was just really interesting, and just messed around with that and played my sax and keyboard and came up with the idea for the chorus for Play the Game. But one thing we wanted to keep in mind is that someday, hopefully soon, we'll have to play these tunes, and we wanted to write tunes that we're going to be able to play live.
Doubling's always been sort of one of the main things. I play the bass pedal as well, playing the guitar at the same time. And Johnny used to play two horns at the same time, like Roland Kirk. But now that we've been getting into synthesizers, Johnny's been playing synthesizer while playing horn at the same time.
I'd say curiosity and nostalgia are probably the two driving factors behind Arcade. Nostalgia, well, I think probably almost everybody's feeling at least a little bit nostalgic right now, considering our current social situation. But I'm in my mid-40s now, and I found myself thinking a lot about the time I grew up, the 80s. The movies, the video games, the music, just being a kid. So I guess you could call this my midlife crisis album. I can't afford a motorcycle, but I can relive my past through music and sound.
I imagine Arcade is what you'd get if you took a bunch of jazz musicians from the 80s and had them make a musical soundtrack to the movie Tron, but live and in the moment.
I started playing in the band in 2009. First gig was at the Tequila Bookworm, but one of the earliest gigs was at the Montreal Jazz Fest for the Grand Prix Jazz, which was it was a fun gig, a lot of people.
You know, I was a music student, and I made friends with an slightly older music student named Johnny Griffith, who's a saxophone player, and we started jamming together, hanging out.
Took me a while to finish school. I think about 13 years to get my bachelor's degree. I kept leaving to go on the road with different bands, and then I'd come back and do a course. And one of those times I came back and I met Nathan. And we played together quite a bit back then. But I think what sort of, solidified our friendship is after the gigs we'd hang out together and just make up stories, and then we started writing them down, and that became the script for a movie that we still want to make. Someday we'll make this script, and that's where the movie theme came from. We thought, hey, well, if we're musicians, we've got a movie, we've got to have a movie theme.
Then we started writing tunes. We started this project, that we've just gotten a lot of satisfaction and enjoyment from over the years, and really nice to be still doing it.
Well, it costs a whole lot less than a quarter to play this record, so give Arcade a whirl.
GHT is the band in which we can experiment and not be afraid to try out crazy ideas, but most importantly, have fun.
There's a big palette to this album, and it feels really good to put it together,